Honourable member.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering, I mean, we hear that, you know, we have to wait on the peacekeeping commitment. We hear that we have to wait for the defense policy review. We have to wait to replenish our Air Force. We have to wait to replenish our Navy. I'm just wondering if the Minister thinks it's appropriate that waiting for Godot be the unifying theme of our defense policy.
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Chair, I'm very proud that within 18 months we have been able to accomplish this. On June 7th, we'll be announcing a defense policy. We will be committing troops for United Nations operations. We have taken a leadership role at NATO. Within 18 months, Mr. Chair, our government has a track record of being credible partners around the world. I'm very proud of the efforts of the Canadian Armed Forces and all the efforts within our government.
The Honourable Member for Elmwood-Transcona.
And I'm curious to know, Mr. Chair, were the details of that defense policy review shared at the latest NATO conference?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Chair, at the NATO conference, we talked about the great contribution that the leadership that Canada has taken. The Prime Minister talked about our leadership role with the framework nations. We talked about our frigate that's also in the Mediterranean, our air policing. Also a wider look at what we're doing in the Ukraine, Mr. Chair. We're very proud of the leadership role that we've taken at NATO.
The Honourable Member.
So was that a yes, details were shared, or a no, they weren't?
The Honourable Minister.
I have made many speeches on this. I've said it, when it comes to our defense policy, this is a defense policy that Canadians had an input in. This defense policy will be presented to Canadians.
Honourable Member.
I'm wondering if Canadians' representatives will have an opportunity to weigh in on that defense policy. Will the Minister present that policy here in the House and provide an opportunity for debate either in this House or a committee?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Chair, I hope that the member actually provided the input into the defense policy review. All parliamentarians had an opportunity. Canadians had an opportunity. Experts also did as well. We got tremendous feedback, and I hope the member provided input into it, as members opposite from the other parties have, and we've taken that very, very seriously, because this is a policy, Canada's defense policy for all of us. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Elmwood-Transcona.
Members are, of course, always glad to weigh in at the beginning that goes into what the government ultimately produces, but we also like to have input and evaluate, the opportunity to evaluate what comes out of that black box of government, Mr. Speaker. That's why we want to know if the government's going to be tabling that in the House and providing an opportunity for debate either in the House or committee. That's a yes.
The Honourable Minister.
Chair, when we announced the defense policy, like we've always done, we also discussed the many methods of opportunity that parliamentarians will be able to take part in the defense policy once we announce, to be able to making sure that the feedback that we got from Canadians from across Canada has been inputted into this defense policy.
Honourable Member.
Right here in that response is that the Minister won't be providing opportunity for debate either in the House or in committee. Does he deny it?
The Minister.
Mr. Chair, on June 7th, we'll also be announcing the method in terms of where parliamentarians can how they will be take part in that debate. We've taken a very open, transparent methodology when it came to the defense policy review in terms of how we put this together, and we will do the same once we announce it as well.
The Honourable Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does the Minister believe that it's the prerogative of government to decide how Parliament is going to weigh in, or does he think it's the right of Parliament to weigh in on defense policy decisions?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Chair, all Canadians, including parliamentarians, have the right to be able to weigh in, to making sure that this defence policy is going to be set the stage for the Canadian Armed Force for the next 20 years. When it comes to defence policy, any issues in defence, I've made it very clear, Mr. Chair. I wrote 2 letters to members of Parliament, and his colleague next to him also knows. I made the Department of National Defence open to members of Parliament.
The Honourable Member for Elmwood-Transcona.
Mr. Chair, it stands to reason we can't weigh in on a policy when we don't know what it is. So until we know what that policy is, then we need to have the opportunity for debate and discussion. So that's why I'm asking, will the Minister bring it either to the House or committee for that discussion?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Chair, we'll be presenting, like we've always done, the methodology and how people can weigh in. But when it comes to the early portions of the defence policy review, I hope the member actually provided the input into it, because we've taken that extremely seriously, to making sure that their input was taken into account, and as all Canadians' input was taken into account.
Down to the last 2 minutes or so, the Honourable Member for Elmwood-Transcona.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wonder, did the Minister take that input more seriously than the Minister for Democratic Reform took the input on democratic reform?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Chair, I'm very proud of the consultation that we have taken across this country. I said to say, I hope his input was provided to the department. I will look into making sure that was done. I made extreme efforts to making sure that all parliamentarians, not only for the Defence Policy Review, that have also made the Canadian Armed Forces more accessible, to allow members of Parliament on an engagement plan, to be able to understand the military more, that the decision for members of Parliament to even go to bases is rests with the commanding officers and the base commanders, and including the engagement plan that I know many members have took part in.